Somerset Police, how can I help?
It appears my daughter's gone missing.
No one has seen her, no.
No. We phoned round the family, all her friends have contacted us, asking where she is, and none of them know.
What's her name?
Rebecca Watts.
Hi M&Ms, welcome back to another episode of Murder and More. As always, I am your host, Kira. Living at home and with your family should be your safe haven. It's the location you should feel the most secure. You walk home from work or climb out of your car, and when you shut the front door, you finally feel like you're out of harm's way. The click of the door closing provides you with the reassurance that the outside world can no longer hurt you. You're with family who love you unconditionally. But sadly, Becky Watts' security in her own home would be shattered, and even worse, it would be at the hands of an individual who she should have been able to trust the most. Now, I'm going to start by telling you a bit about Becky Watts. So she had lived with her father, Darren Goldsworthy, and her stepmom, Angie Goldsworthy, since she was about 3 years old. She also had a stepbrother, Nathan Matthews, who was 12 years older than Becky was. And he lived with his grandmother, and she was actually the person who raised him. According to friends, they were a nice, loving and harmonious family, and Becky was described as a bright child who was shy and withdrawn. However, she was gaining in confidence as she got older. So this story starts on the 20th of February 2015 in Bristol, which is about an hour away from where I live. 16-year-old Becky Watts was reported missing to police at about 4 p.m. by her father, who said that his wife and Becky's stepmom, Angie, last saw her the previous morning just before she left for a hospital appointment at about 11 a.m. Angie says that alarm bells started ringing on the 20th when Becky's friends all turned up at the house asking where she was, which prompted her to call Darren and prompted him to report her missing to the police. Along with Becky, her phone and laptop were also missing. While police began to search the local area, Becky's father made an emotional appeal on the radio. He says, "I'm just so desperate to find her. It just doesn't add up. None of her clothes are missing. Her toothbrush is here. Her makeup's still here. This is all at home. She would not leave the house. I've not been able to eat or sleep since she's gone missing. I just need her home." Becky's family tell police that it was completely out of character for her to run away. She'd never done it before, and she never even went anywhere without telling someone where she was going. Becky's best friend also corroborates this, saying that Becky wouldn't even stay out late. After 4 days with still absolutely no sign of Becky, her father Darren and her maternal grandmother made an emotional police appeal.
Bex, if you're watching this, please come home. We love you so much, and whatever you think, we can sort anything out, doesn't matter. Just come home.
You're so loved, and I don't think you believe it. You really are so loved. And look at your poor dad. Please come home, or whoever's sheltering here, do the right thing. Thank you.
Now, police say that, dozens of teenagers go missing in Bristol on a daily basis, and the outcome is usually either they're found by family, they're found by police, or they just turn up on their own accord. However, police felt like this case was different. There was no sign that Becky had used her phone or any social media since she disappeared, which raised the first red flag of many to the police and made them suspicious that something bad had happened to Becky. So they turned to social media and launched an online campaign using the hashtag #FindBecky. Within a few days, the campaign had reached over 2 million people, and the story was starting to make the headlines. However, the online campaign drew in no leads as to where Becky may be. Despite over 100 volunteers searching the local area and missing persons posters being put up around Bristol, there were no reported sightings of Becky. It seemed like she had just vanished into thin air. 5 days after Becky was last seen, her father made an emotional TV appeal supported by his younger brother.
Be brave. Be brave. Darling little girl.
Police expanded their search, supported by the local community. A pond was even dredged in hope that they might find something. It was starting to become apparent that police were searching for a body at this point. As they had zero leads and the case wasn't moving forwards, attention began to turn towards Becky's home and her family. On the 25th of February 2015, 5 days after Becky was reported missing and 6 days after she was last seen, police began questioning all of her friends and family. Among the people questioned were Becky's stepbrother Nathan and his girlfriend Shauna Hall, who, according to police, were both quite difficult to get to the station, which raised another red flag to the police. During the interviews, both Shauna and Nathan were fairly light-hearted, and they even laughed and made jokes at some points, which wasn't really in keeping with the fact that Nathan's stepsister and Shauna's boyfriend's stepsister was missing. Both their answers and account of the day Becky went missing were very similar, which made police believe that they'd got their story straight before their interviews. In her interview, Shauna told police that her and Nathan were both at the house the day Becky was last seen by her stepmother Angie, and confirms that they were actually the last people to see her.
Then I heard the front door slam. Carried on, pushed my hands, went into the living room. And then I think it was until a lot later on that Angie asked me if Becky had gone out. And I said, yeah, I heard the door. No, she must have gone out earlier. I assumed she was in a bit of one of her tantrums.
I believe this clip brings up several questions. Is Shauna really telling the truth? Did Becky really leave the house on her own accord and just decide not to go back, even though she had no reason to disappear? Or are Shauna and Nathan lying about what happened that day? And thankfully, this is a case where these questions are answered. Now, forensic teams moved into Becky's family home and started examining it, and they made a startling discovery. On Becky's bedroom doorframe, they found what appeared to be traces of blood in several different places, some really low on the frame, some about waist height, and some about shoulder height. This was police's third red flag. Why was this blood here, and how did it get there? But this wasn't their only discovery. They also found a fingerprint amongst the traces of blood. Whilst police were waiting for results back on the blood and the fingerprint, they brought Nathan and Shauna back in for more questioning, where Shauna tells them that both Nathan and his mother Angie have found this whole situation really difficult to deal with. However, Nathan tells police that he doesn't really like Becky and he finds her quite rude, and this is the police's first insight into how Nathan really feels about his stepsister. When forensic results came back, they confirmed that it was Nathan's fingerprint in Becky's blood on the doorframe of her bedroom. On the 28th of February 2015, 8 days after Becky was reported missing and 9 days after she was last seen, 28-year-old Nathan Matthews and 21-year-old Shauna Hall were arrested on suspicion of kidnapping Becky Watts. When Becky's family were informed of this, her maternal grandmother said that if something bad had happened to Becky, that she wouldn't be surprised if Nathan was involved, as he made it obvious that he hated Becky. Police interviewed the couple again, however they were able to ask more in-depth questions about Becky's disappearance since the pair had been arrested and weren't just witnesses. Police said that Shauna was confident and articulate, which meant that they were able to be fairly confrontational with her. She insisted that she had no idea what had happened to Becky and maintained that none of Nathan's family were capable of harming her or causing her disappearance. Nathan, however, was a more difficult character, and police believed he wouldn't have handled confrontation very well. Instead, their tactic with him was to just let him talk and let him think that he had control over the interview. Once police felt that he had some control over the interview, they changed techniques and started asking him more direct questions about Becky's disappearance. He insisted that he had absolutely no idea where Becky could be, had no idea if she was alive or dead, and he definitely hadn't hurt her. Police didn't tell him that they had the forensic results, which showed it was his fingerprint in Becky's blood on her bedroom door. Instead, they hinted at it and asked if Nathan had gone upstairs at all the day she went missing, to which Nathan told the police that he hadn't. The police searched Nathan and Shauna's house, which was about a mile away from where Becky lived. They said it was so cluttered. It was so cluttered, in fact, that it was even difficult to get through the front door because they had 2 fridges behind it. Each room was just completely jam-packed with stuff, and I honestly can't believe how anyone lived there. They walked into the bathroom and found that there was an oven and a microwave in there, as you would normally find in a bathroom. However, the bath, which was on the right side of the bathroom, was pristine. It was so clean that it raised another red flag to police. In addition to a suspiciously clean bath, police also found receipts at the house showing that someone had been to B&Q the day Becky was reported missing and had bought a circular saw, gloves, goggles, and a face mask, which took the case in a really sinister direction. Now, just a quick side note, I know a lot of my listeners aren't from England, so just to clarify, B&Q is a British DIY store. On the 2nd of March 2015, both Nathan Matthews and Shauna Hall were arrested on suspicion of the murder of Becky Watts. That same day, Nathan gave a written statement to the police that was read out by his lawyer.
I, Nathan Charles Matthews, accept I'm responsible for the death of Rebecca Watts. On the 19th of February 2015, I attended Crown Hill St George, Bristol, with my girlfriend Shauna Hall. In my car, I had a large bag, a stun device, handcuffs, tape and mask. I developed an idea to scare Rebecca by kidnapping her. I believed that she was selfish and her behaviour towards my mother was a risk to her health.
The prepared statement went on to say, quote, "A few minutes after arriving, Shauna said she wanted a cigarette and went into the garden. I went to the boot of my car and took out a bag that contained the items. I took everything upstairs to the landing. I think I then took the items out of the bag before knocking on Rebecca's door. She replied, 'What?' or 'Hello?' and I said, 'Can I see you for a minute?' or similar words. I cannot be sure which order things happened immediately after she came to the door, but I used the items I had to subdue Rebecca. During the short struggle, my mask slipped and Rebecca was able to see my face. This caused me to panic and I strangled her while she was partially in the bag. I collected the items I had used, put them and Rebecca into the bag and zipped up the bag. I also took her phone, tablet and laptop together with shoes, some clothes and a duvet cover from the spare room in a separate bag. I took everything downstairs and put it in the boot of my car. Back in the house, I waited to hear Shauna then slam the front door shut. Before going to the front room, I checked that Shauna was not in that room. The rest of the day goes as it would normally if we were there. We leave at about 7 p.m. The rest of the evening passed as usual, but I cannot remember exactly what we did. After Shauna went to bed and sleep, I waited a while and went out to the car and brought the bags into the house. The following day we went back to Crown Hill and I tried to behave as normal. I tried to behave as normal as I could. When we returned home, I again waited for Shauna to go to sleep. This time I collected the bag with Rebecca's body and placed it in the bath. In order to stop Shauna using the bathroom the following morning, I poured drain cleaner down the toilet so I could tell Shauna it was blocked again. The toilet would often get blocked, and when that happened, I knew Shauna would not go in the bathroom. I also locked the door." End quote. Nathan told the police that he'd come up with a plan to scare Becky to make her more appreciative of life and of her stepmother, and to try and make her a better person.
So I came up with the idea to scare her, because, to try and basically make her more appreciative of life, so she'd be more appreciative for other people. She'd be, grateful that, she wasn't harmed or anything like that, or, because obviously, she'd leave things out on the floor of my mum to trip over, and obviously would talk to her, saying nasty comments and talk to her like dirt on the floor. And I thought if I was, able to scare her, and obviously her not be harmed, and obviously be released. Obviously when she got back, she obviously would have been scared and more appreciative of things, as people are.
Nathan drove to Becky's house the day he killed her, prepared. In his car he had a stun gun, a large suitcase, some tape and handcuffs. He was also wearing a mask to hide his identity. He told police his plan for exactly how he was going to carry out this kidnapping.
Obviously stick her in the suitcase. Obviously put tape around her mouth so she wouldn't make any noise. Obviously, the plan was obviously once I got her in the car to make up something to say to Shauna. Obviously I had to leave, to help someone or do something. And I hadn't figured out exactly how to obviously walk away after without obviously. But if she'd try and follow, I'm assuming she wouldn't have followed because out of fear he wouldn't want to follow someone who just obviously has done that. And obviously would have come back. Well, I would have obviously chucked away obviously everything first and then come back. And obviously would have acted as normal. I was thinking of a wooded area or whatever to obviously take her back out. Obviously still have the mask on. And obviously, scare her and, say something along the lines of, you've got to start treating people better, not being a bitch or self-centered. And then, make a threat of, or this could happen again or worse or something like that.
Now, a behavioural analyst has actually studied the interview. He says that when someone is telling the truth, they convey their story, whereas when they're lying, they have to convince the interviewer. Now, the use of the word obviously was really annoying me, and the analyst actually counted that Nathan used the word 24 times during his confession, which he said is an adverb that is an alternative to telling the truth. Nathan basically used this word so many times because he was trying to convince the interviewer that he was telling them the truth and that it was an accident. A behavioural analyst also studied Shauna's interview. Now, Shauna made a claim that no one knows what really went on and that Nathan had planned all of this without anyone knowing. After she made this statement, Shauna shrugged one of her shoulders, which the behavioural analyst said that when an affirmative statement is being made with a single-sided shoulder shrug, the statement is untrue. Police found CCTV of Shauna Hall with Nathan Matthews buying cleaning products and duct tape. When police interviewed her, Shauna told them that she didn't know anything about Nathan's plan to kidnap Becky, and she insisted that Nathan acted alone and that she was disgusted when she heard what he had done to Becky.
I felt sick looking at him, knowing what he did. And yeah, I didn't always like Becky, but she was a nice enough girl. She was so young.
But the police were convinced that she was lying. Whilst Shauna was denying any involvement in Becky's murder, Nathan made another shocking confession. After he'd killed Becky, he told detectives that he'd dismembered her body using the saw that he'd bought, wrapped the body parts and put them in bags. He then asked two of his friends, Carl Demetrius and Jadine Parsons, to hide the bags. They told police that they had no idea that the bag contained parts of Becky's body. After Nathan's confession and 12 days after Becky disappeared, police found her body in Demetrius and Parsons' garden shed. Becky's body had been dismembered into 8 parts, including being decapitated, and each of those parts had been wrapped in cling film, thick blue plastic bags and Asda shopping bags, and was then wrapped with lots of tape in an effort to preserve the parts and to stop them from smelling so that they wouldn't be discovered. They wrapped Becky's torso in 2 bath mats, a shower curtain and a bag that said "It's my birthday" on it. Now, in my opinion, and I'm sure many others, it takes a certain type of person to dismember a body, a sick, twisted individual. And I have a question. If it was an accident, as he claimed, why did he go on and dismember her? I know if I'd accidentally killed someone, my first thought definitely wouldn't be to chop up the body, wrap it up in cling film and ask a friend to put it in their shed. I'd want to get help as quickly as I could. After his confession, the police asked Nathan several direct questions about Becky's murder. They asked him if Becky was standing up when he was strangling her, how incapacitated Becky was after he strangled her, and if she was conscious when he strangled her, all to which he gave no comment answers. He also insisted that he had acted alone, but police were convinced that he hadn't, and their next step was to prove that Shauna was involved in the murder as they suspected. After questioning the couple for the 96 hours which is allowed by British law, Nathan was charged with Becky's murder and remanded in custody awaiting trial. Despite police still having no proof that Shauna was involved, they still wanted to detain her until they found the evidence that would link her to Becky's murder. So to enable them to detain her, they charged Shauna with perverting the course of justice. And in the months that followed Nathan's confession, detectives discovered the real motive behind Becky's murder, and it was much more sinister than a plot to scare her to make her a better person. Police discovered that Nathan was jealous and resentful of Becky, especially as she began to grow up and become a teenager. Becky was getting a lot of supporting care from Nathan's mother Angie, and he despised this. He felt like Becky was favoured, which made him hostile and angry towards her. After school, Nathan studied electrical engineering at college but dropped out after a year. He began working as a delivery driver and then eventually joined the army. They found out that Nathan struggled to control his emotions and anger, and that he was very impulsive and spontaneous and often acted dangerously. He had also developed an obsession with sexual images of teenage girls. A psychologist said that when you watch a certain type of porn a lot, if you have the predisposition, it can spill over into real life. When Nathan was 21, he met Shauna Hall, a teenage girl who was about 14 or 15 and who had spent a lot of her life in care. In the UK, a 21-year-old dating and having a sexual relationship with a 15-year-old is considered a sexual offence, which technically made Nathan a paedophile. British law states that no one under the age of 16 has the capacity to consent to sexual acts. Nathan was a mature adult and Shauna was really just a vulnerable teenager. The couple started to share sexual fantasies, and as the years went on, these fantasies started to dominate their lives. They became hauled up in one room of the cluttered house they lived in together, looking at abuse images online and discussing what they wanted to do to teenage girls. It was always going to end in a dark place, but no one could have predicted that dark place would be quite so dark and sinister. Now, detectives examined Shauna and Nathan's phones and laptops and discovered disturbing evidence of their sexual fantasies. They found text messages between the couple about the abduction of teenage girls and about taking them to their home and putting them in their loft. In his interview with police, Nathan hadn't admitted to any sexual motive for Becky's murder, and he stuck to his story of a kidnap plot that went wrong. Police believe he did this because he was trying to deter from the fact that he was a perverted killer. Police put the text to Shauna, who, unsurprisingly, answered no comment. One of the texts that they found from Nathan to Shauna said, "Fuck you, bring me back 2 pretty schoolgirls then." Another text from Shauna to Nathan said, "Just went to Cost Cutters and saw a very pretty petite girl, almost knocked her out to bring her home, lol." Police then made another discovery, one that they had been longing for. Shauna's DNA was found on a face mask and one of the bags that contained Becky's remains, which was the evidence that police needed that suggested Shauna had been involved in the dismembering and packaging of Becky's body. Both Nathan Matthews and Shauna Hall were charged with the kidnapping and murder of Becky Watts and were also charged with perverting the course of justice. When detectives examined the bathroom of Nathan and Shauna's home, no traces of Becky's DNA were found, but police had the CCTV evidence of them buying cleaning products at a supermarket 48 hours after Becky was killed, and they were sure that these cleaning products are what the couple used to make the bath clean. Police and psychologists believe that Nathan learnt skills in the army that came in handy when he was disposing of Becky's body. They discovered that he'd bought cat litter which absorbs moisture and smells, which is a good thing to use to wrap body parts in, as it eliminates the smell. Nathan denied murder and conspiracy to kidnap, but admitted to manslaughter. He also pleaded guilty to perverting the course of justice, preventing the burial of a corpse, and possessing a prohibited weapon. Shauna Hall denied murder, conspiracy to kidnap, perverting the course of justice, preventing the burial of a corpse, and possessing a prohibited weapon. The trial began at Bristol Crown Court in October 2015. The prosecution told the court that on the 19th of February 2015, Nathan and Shauna drove to their family home carrying a stun gun and handcuffs in order to kidnap Becky. they told the court that Nathan suffocated Becky in her bedroom, put her body in a suitcase and drove it to their flat. There, Nathan dumped Becky's body in the bath and stabbed her 15 times. He then dismembered her body. They showed the court CCTV, which showed Nathan buying the saw that they believe is what he used to dismember Becky's body, and the saw that the police had found receipts for at the couple's home when they searched it. Hours after they killed Becky, the couple returned to the family home and spent the evening with Nathan's mum and Becky's dad, knowing what they'd done to Darren's daughter just hours earlier. Details of Becky's murder and what happened after wasn't all the court heard though. They were also told by a girl who hasn't been named that she had several threesomes with the couple and spent a lot of time around them. She tells the court that Nathan was controlling over Shauna, saying that he didn't like her smoking, so when she wanted a cigarette, he'd make her pay him for one. This unidentified girl also told the court that Nathan was aggressive towards Shauna, and she recalled that several times Nathan told Shauna to, quote, "shut the fuck up, you twat," end quote. The court was also told by the pathologist who examined Becky's body parts that it was clear a violent struggle had ensued, and that Becky had fought for her life as she was being strangled by her stepbrother. According to the pathologist, Dr. Deborah Cook, she found over 40 injuries to Becky's body. The trial lasted 7 weeks, and the jury deliberated for just 3.5 hours. They found Nathan Matthews guilty of his stepsister's kidnap and murder, and he was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum term of 33 years. The jury also found Shauna Hoare guilty of manslaughter, and she was sentenced to 17 years in prison. Nathan's friends who owned the shed where Becky's body was found were both found guilty of assisting an offender, and Carl Demetrius was jailed for 2 years and Jadine Parsons for 16 months. In 2016, both Shauna and Nathan appealed against their convictions, but on the 23rd of June, the Court of Appeals rejected this, saying that there was no reasonable argument that the convictions are unsafe or that their sentences were wrong in principle or manifestly excessive. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to head over to Apple Podcasts to leave a rating and review, and Patreon to consider becoming a patron of Murder and More. To interact with us, you can follow us on Twitter and Tumblr at Murder and More, Instagram at Murder and More Pod, and Facebook at Murder and More Podcast. Have a great week, and I'll see you all next week for another episode.